Have you ever wondered why some countries just keep getting richer, year after year, while others seem stuck in place? Like, Switzerland's average person makes over $90,000 per year. Meanwhile, in other countries, people work just as hard, but make a fraction of that. And here's the weird part. This gap isn't shrinking. In many cases, it's actually getting wider. Here at Simple Money, we've spent time breaking down complex economic patterns, and today, I'm going to reveal the real mechanisms that make rich countries richer. Not the textbook answers, the actual forces at play. Because once you understand this, you'll see why building personal wealth follows eerily similar patterns, and why the same principles that make countries rich can make you rich too. So let's dive into what's really happening behind the curtain of global wealth. Most people think rich countries stay rich because they have more natural resources, or because they got lucky historically, or because they exploit poorer countries. And look, some of that plays a role. History matters, resources matter. But here's what's really happening. Rich countries have created self-reinforcing systems that automatically generate more wealth every single year. It's not about working harder. It's about how the entire economy is structured. Think about your own finances for a second. If you have money saved, that money can earn interest. It can grow. You can invest it and make more money without working additional hours. But if you have no savings, you can work just as hard, but you're not generating that automatic growth. You're treading water. Rich countries have figured out the national equivalent of compound interest. And once you see how it works, you can't unsee it. The crazy part? Most people never learn this. They just see the outcome. Rich countries are rich, poor countries are poor, and they assume that's just how things are. But the mechanisms creating this divide are actually pretty straightforward once you break them down. And honestly, a bit uncomfortable to think about. The first reason is what I call the knowledge compound effect. Here's something most people don't realize. The biggest difference between rich and poor countries isn't natural resources. It's not even money, really. It's knowledge, specifically accumulated technical knowledge and skills. Think about it this way. In a rich country, when someone invents something or figures out a better way to do things, that knowledge doesn't disappear when they retire. It gets written down, taught in universities, passed on to the next generation, built upon by others. Over time, this creates a massive knowledge base. Germany knows how to build incredibly precise machines. Japan knows how to manufacture electronics at scale. The United States knows how to develop software and create entertainment. This knowledge is everywhere. In the engineers, in the factory workers, in the managers, in the education system. And here's where the compound effect kicks in. When you have more knowledge, you can create more valuable things. More valuable things generate more wealth. More wealth allows you to invest in education and research, which generates more knowledge. It's a cycle that feeds itself. Every year, the knowledge base gets deeper, the skills get more refined, the innovations get more sophisticated. Now, contrast this with a country that doesn't have this knowledge base built up. They might have smart, hard-working people, but if they don't have the accumulated technical know-how, they can't produce high-value goods. So they end up producing simpler things, things that don't require as much specialized knowledge, things that don't generate as much wealth per hour of work. And without that wealth, they can't invest as much in education and research, so the knowledge gap persists, or widens. It's like trying to build a house without knowing carpentry, plumbing, or electrical work. You might figure out some of it through trial and error, but you're starting from scratch while others are building skyscrapers. The knowledge compound effect is brutal because it's invisible. You can't see knowledge, you can't measure it easily, but its effects are massive and cumulative. The second reason is what I call the trust infrastructure multiplier. This one might blow your mind because it's something we completely take for granted in wealthy countries. When you buy something online in a rich country, you expect it to arrive. When you sign a contract, you expect it to be enforceable. When you put money in a bank, you expect it to be there tomorrow. This basic trust in systems is worth trillions of dollars. Literally. See, every economic transaction has hidden costs. Economists call them transaction costs. The time and resources spent making sure you don't get screwed. In a country with strong institutions, these costs are low. You don't need to personally know the seller. You don't need to hire private security. You don't need to keep cash under your mattress because banks might collapse. Courts work. Police work. Regulations get enforced. Contracts mean something. This might sound boring, but think about what it enables. You can do business with complete strangers across the country. You can invest in companies you've never visited. You can plan for the future because property rights are protected. All of this economic activity that would be too risky or expensive in a low-trust environment becomes routine, normal. Now, imagine a country where you can't trust these systems, where contracts might not be enforced, where officials might be corrupt, where banks might fail or seize your money. Every transaction becomes exponentially more complicated. You only do business with family or people you know personally. You keep wealth in physical assets you can guard. You can't plan long-term because the rules might change. The economy runs slower, much slower, because every transaction requires extra verification, extra security, extra personal relationships. It's like trying to run a marathon while wearing a weighted vest. You might be just as athletic as someone without the vest, but you're going to be a lot slower. Rich countries built this trust infrastructure over decades or centuries. Court systems, banking regulations, property laws, anti-corruption measures. And once it exists, it multiplies the value of every economic activity. Businesses can scale faster. Innovation can spread quicker. Investments can grow bigger. The trust infrastructure multiplier is why you can't just give money to a poor country and expect them to become rich. The system that makes money productive has to exist first. The third reason is what I call the capital cascade. This one's about how money flows and accumulates in ways that favor those who already have it. In a rich country, there's a lot of capital. Money looking for places to grow. Investors looking for opportunities. When someone has a good business idea in a rich country, they can potentially get funding. Venture capital, bank loans, angel investors, crowdfunding. This means good ideas can actually become real businesses. Innovation can happen faster. Smart people can focus on creating value instead of just surviving. But here's the cascade effect. When these businesses succeed, they create more capital. That capital looks for new places to invest, which funds more businesses, which creates more capital. The money multiplies and spreads throughout the economy, creating jobs, generating wealth, enabling more innovation. Now think about a poor country. There's much less capital available, fewer investors, smaller banks, less lending capacity. So even if someone has a brilliant business idea, they might not be able to fund it. They might have to start so small that they never reach efficient scale, or they might not start at all. The lack of capital means fewer businesses get created. Less innovation happens. Less wealth gets generated, which means even less capital is available. It's the opposite of a virtuous cycle. It's a vicious cycle that's really hard to break out of. And here's what makes this particularly cruel. Capital is mobile. Money can flow across borders. If you're an investor with money, where are you going to invest it? In a rich country, with strong institutions, deep knowledge, and growing markets? Or in a poor country with weak institutions, less infrastructure, and higher risk? Most capital flows to where capital already exists, because that's where the returns are highest and most secure. The rich countries get richer because capital is attracted to capital. The poor countries struggle to accumulate capital because capital leaves or never arrives. It's like a game where some players start with 10 times as much money as others, and the rules of the game favor those with more money. Over time, the gap just grows. The fourth reason is what I call the scale advantage spiral. This one's about how size creates efficiency, and efficiency creates more size. In a rich country with a large economy, businesses can achieve massive scale. A company can sell to millions of customers. A factory can produce millions of units. And here's the thing about scale. The more you produce, the cheaper each unit becomes. This is called economies of scale. If you're making one custom chair, it might cost you $300 in materials and time. But if you're making 1 million chairs, you can negotiate bulk discounts on materials. You can automate production. You can specialize workers. Each chair might cost you $50. This means businesses in large, rich economies can produce things more cheaply than businesses in smaller, poorer economies, even if wages are higher in the rich country, because efficiency matters more than labor costs for many products. So, the rich country's businesses can compete globally. They can export products, they can generate profits, they can reinvest in more efficient technology. Meanwhile, businesses in smaller economies struggle to reach efficient scale. They can't compete on cost. They get stuck in local markets. They can't grow as fast. And here's where the spiral kicks in. As rich countries' businesses grow, their economies grow. Larger economies have more customers. More customers mean more potential scale. More scale means more efficiency. The spiral keeps spinning upward. Rich countries' economies can support bigger and more efficient businesses, which makes their economies grow faster, which makes their businesses even more competitive. It's like being the biggest kid in school who also happens to be growing faster than everyone else. The gap just keeps widening. The fifth reason is what I call the innovation ecosystem effect. This one's fascinating because it shows how innovation isn't just about smart people. It's about having the right environment. In rich countries, you have universities doing cutting-edge research, companies investing in development, government funding for science, venture capital funding experimentation. But more importantly, you have all these pieces talking to each other. Researchers move to companies, company engineers teach at universities, failed startups create experienced entrepreneurs who try again. This creates what economists call spillover effects. When one company innovates, nearby companies learn from it. When one researcher makes a breakthrough, others build on it. Silicon Valley is the perfect example. It's not that California has smarter people than everywhere else. It's that there's a dense concentration of tech companies, investors, engineers, and entrepreneurs all learning from each other. Ideas spread. Talent moves around. Best practices get adopted quickly. Failure isn't stigmatized because everyone knows someone who failed and then succeeded. This ecosystem is incredibly powerful. It accelerates innovation far beyond what any individual company or researcher could do alone. And once it exists, it's self-reinforcing. Success attracts talent. Talent creates more success. More success attracts more investment. More investment enables more experimentation. Countries without this ecosystem struggle to innovate at the same pace. They might have individual brilliant people, but without the ecosystem, innovation happens slower and spreads less. It's like trying to start a fire with one match versus having a bonfire going. Once the bonfire's lit, it's easy to keep it burning and growing. But getting that initial fire started, that's really hard. But here's what nobody wants to admit about all of this. About the knowledge compound effect, the trust infrastructure multiplier, the capital cascade, the scale advantage spiral, and the innovation ecosystem effect. These mechanisms don't just make rich countries richer, they make it really hard for poor countries to catch up. This is where things get uncomfortable, because we like to believe that everyone has an equal opportunity, that hard work is all that matters. But the global economy isn't a level playing field. It's a game where some players start with massive advantages, and the rules of the game amplify those advantages over time. A smart, hardworking person in a poor country faces barriers that have nothing to do with their individual merit. They're operating in a system with less accumulated knowledge, weaker institutions, less capital, smaller scale, and no innovation ecosystem. It's not impossible to succeed, but it requires overcoming systemic disadvantages that people in rich countries never even think about. And here's the part that should make you think. These same principles apply at the individual level. People who grow up with access to good education are accumulating knowledge. People who grow up in stable environments develop trust in systems. People who start with some capital can invest and grow it. People in large networks can leverage scale. People in the right communities benefit from innovation ecosystems. The mechanisms that make countries rich are the same mechanisms that make individuals rich. Compound effects, infrastructure, capital, scale, ecosystems. Understanding this doesn't solve global inequality, but it does reveal something important about building personal wealth. Let me tell you about James. James read about how people in rich countries build wealth, invest in stocks, start businesses, leverage opportunities. So James tried to do the same things. He saved up a little money. He tried to start a side business. He looked for investment opportunities. But here's what James didn't realize. He was trying to copy the tactics without having the underlying systems. James had no mentor or network to guide him. No one in his family had ever invested successfully. He didn't know which information sources to trust. He didn't have access to the same opportunities or platforms. When his business struggled, he had no one to ask for advice. When he needed to learn new skills, he couldn't afford courses or didn't know which ones were legitimate. When he tried to invest, he fell for scams because he didn't have the background knowledge to spot them. James did all the right tactics, but he didn't have the infrastructure, the knowledge base, the trust network, the capital access. The ecosystem. After 3 years, James had burned through his savings. His business failed. His investment attempts lost money. He felt like he'd done everything right but still failed. And the frustrating thing? James blamed himself. He thought he wasn't smart enough, wasn't hardworking enough, wasn't disciplined enough. But really, James was trying to succeed without the systems that make success likely. Now let me tell you about Maria. Maria also wanted to build wealth. She also read the same advice about investing and entrepreneurship. But Maria did something different. Before she tried any tactics, she focused on building systems. She found online communities of people doing what she wanted to do. Free forums, Reddit groups, Discord servers, places where she could learn and ask questions. She spent 6 months just learning, not doing, learning, reading, asking questions, understanding how things actually worked. She started tiny, not with a business, but with a $10 per month side gig on Fiverr, just to understand how online transactions work, how to deliver value, how to get reviews. She invested $20 in an index fund, not to make money, but to learn how investing platforms work, how to read statements, how compound interest actually functions. She focused on building her knowledge base first, her personal trust infrastructure, her tiny amounts of capital, her understanding of scale, her connection to ecosystems. After 3 years, Maria had a small but profitable side business, a modest investment portfolio that she understood, a network of people she could learn from, systems that worked for her. Maria's total wealth wasn't that much bigger than James's at the start, but Maria's trajectory was completely different. She was building the infrastructure that would enable bigger success later. James tried to jump straight to wealth. Maria built the systems that create wealth. Here's what most people don't realize. Wealth isn't just about money. It's about systems, infrastructure, knowledge, networks, ecosystems. Rich countries understood this. They didn't just accumulate money, they built the systems that generate money automatically. And individuals who build lasting wealth do the same thing. They don't just chase money. They build personal systems that generate opportunities. The difference wasn't about James being lazy and Maria being disciplined. They both worked hard. The difference was that Maria understood that she needed to build her own version of what makes countries rich, her own knowledge base, her own trust networks, her own capital systems, her own ecosystem connections. She created the infrastructure first. The wealth followed. Here's the truth. You're not competing on a level playing field. Some people started with better systems, more knowledge, stronger networks, more capital, better ecosystems. That's not fair, but it's reality. And you have 2 choices. You can spend your energy being angry about the unfairness, or you can spend your energy building your own systems. The knowledge compound effect, the trust infrastructure multiplier, the capital cascade, the scale advantage spiral, and the innovation ecosystem effect aren't just macroeconomic concepts. They're personal finance principles. Every piece of knowledge you gain compounds over time. Every reliable system you build reduces your transaction costs. Every dollar you save can cascade into more dollars. Every small success gives you experience that scales. Every connection you make expands your ecosystem. You can't change where you started, but you can start building the systems that create compound growth. Rich countries didn't get rich overnight. They built systems over decades, sometimes centuries. Your personal wealth probably won't happen overnight either, but if you focus on building systems instead of just chasing money, the compound effects start working in your favor. The question isn't whether the global economy is fair. It's not. It's heavily skewed toward those with existing advantages. The question is whether you're going to build your own knowledge, infrastructure, capital, scale, and ecosystem anyway. Even if you're starting from behind. Because the same mechanisms that make countries richer every year, they can make you richer every year too. It just starts with understanding the systems, then building them, one piece at a time.